Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. How's everyone doing? Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, Royal Palms. Good morning, Zello. Good morning, Heinrich. Good morning, Holy. Good morning, Anissa. Good morning to people in the background. Good morning to people on Rumble. All right, we'll wait for some other people to roll in while we're waiting for that. What do we got coming up today? We already have the ADP numbers coming out. Higher than prior and higher than consensus, 63K. We have the global composite PMI and services numbers coming out, still expected to both be in expansion territory, and that's at 9:45 Eastern. Then, more important, the ISM services numbers, including the prices subcomponent and employment, come out at 10 a.m. Eastern. We have the EIA numbers coming out at 10:30, and that is about it. You have the Fed Beige Book releasing this afternoon, but nothing major there. Good morning, Jacob. Good morning, Yogi. All right, so that's where we sit so far. It's buy mega caps and buy semis and AI related stuff. Sell oil. Sell oil. Groups, energy down, and real estate down, everything else is positive. Basic materials, technology, and consumer cyclical leading the way. Fed watch. Still for the pause all the way 50-50 for July, but all the way until then has pause priced in. We're still in fear mode. Schiller PE 39.66. In terms of earnings, not much this morning. Not much. And I don't think Sterling's going to be in, so we're not going to talk about it. But we have Broadcom this afternoon. Excuse me, there's been so much dust and dirt in the house. It's my breathing's having trouble. Broadcom this afternoon. Tomorrow in the morning, just again, very light day. Kroger, just going to be paying attention to, but then tomorrow afternoon, Costco. So, coming straight down in the S&P, the futures straight to that 62.5. Couldn't get much more accurate. Coming down to 67.1875. The 62.5 was 67.1925 and bouncing. So no close, no shifting the probabilities. There was a 4-hour percent B buy coming off that level, then retracing, then doing the little retracement right here into the 50 to 62.5 and rotating back up. So overall, we are still testing a very key resistance level. If we get through there, I'm looking at area between the 8 EMA about 68.75 to yesterday's open about 68.82 area. And then above that, we have major resistance about 6,900. But right now, we're testing that critical breakdown level. And this is not a double top. It's just two tops against key resistance because we have, moving that level down, we have, it extends beyond here. So if we did break down against here, we have this little minor double too. Does this one work? This one works on the 15-minute. So it'd be a 15-minute trade. But I'd really be looking, if we did break this down, my target would be about 67.84, where we have a key support level. Good morning, Ted. Good morning, Jake. Do I have a rule for the percent of your portfolio that you expose at once? Sometimes there are a lot of patterns triggering simultaneously. How do I handle that? I go through and I generally look at which ones are triggering at key levels. So that's how I filter them. And yes, I have rules about, you don't want to get in everything. You also don't want to get in everything correlated. Let's say you have 5 double bottoms all triggering in like semiconductors, or double tops all triggering semiconductors. You don't want to take all of them, because then I've essentially put all my capital in correlated assets. So I try to get diversified things like, all right, I'm going to if I have 20 patterns triggering, I'm going to take some across the board in different sectors, and I'm going to put in favor of the ones that trigger in very key areas, like against a major harmonic or against major support or resistance or a major moving average. So that's how I do that. If we break down again, really watch the 67.84 area. If we take that out, it's still a critical 62.5. Other than that, if we do continue to rally, watch the rotation zone on the daily basis. NASDAQ, again, dipping down below the 87.5 yesterday, and the rally back up, another percent B buy. On the 4-hour, little bigger retracement here, but this one, again, did not close below 62.5, and then we bounced again. So the key major resistance still in the NASDAQ is up here around this 25,000 area, which is in the rotation zone. If we got above the top of the rotation zone, I'd be looking at 25,125. And above that, we have the declining 50, about 25,250, and a declining trend line. So still lots of overhead resistance in there. If we roll back down today, this level I'm taking down just a bit closer to 24,570 area. We start breaking below that, I'll look for was a lot of buying pressure down here, right below between about 24,350 and about 24,450. So that's where I'll look for potential support if we do break down again below this 24,570. The Dow, again, now trying to get above the prior breakdown zone. If we do continue to rally, 48,930 and then 49, just about 49,000 are very key resistance areas. So that's where that sits right now. If we come on back down, this 48,200 is the first key level support, and then it would be closer to yesterday's lows. The Russell also, it did confirm the double top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then we confirmed it within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this is confirmed. The only thing that can change that now is the invalidation point. It's not yet triggered. It's just confirmed. So if it closes above 2680.8, it's off the table before it triggers. Otherwise, it's still potentially on the table and looking on this bounce, coming into a minor resistance level about this 26,242, and above that, you're looking at right around 2654. So both those resistance levels are still below the invalidation point. But remember, it has not triggered yet. Shorting the VIX at 28 has been a winner again. Very good. Speaking of the VIX, spiking up there again and pulling back down. Key support on the VIX is just above 2150. So, gonna watch how it reacts in that area. The yields 4.12 is very key resistance, running up to that area yesterday and closing back in the declining rotation zone, trying to move up a little. Yields, we've still got cycles rotating up and not yet overbought, but really going to pay attention in this area because we might then pull back or find some resistance because this is back below very key resistance level. So it's got to get above that and turn that into support before any longs, I'd continue to hold any longs. Gold, rotation zone, we dipped below that 5,100 and down below the rotation zone, but closing back above it. So still holding support. It's gonna be very critical. That 5,100 is still holding on the closing basis. Remember, if we do lose that, I'm back to being very patient, and potentially we could easily retest the 50 EMA again around that 48.75 area. Silver, not much to talk about. Pattern's still not been invalidated. Crude, there is a double top pattern in here. You had a little minor double top that triggered yesterday, but then that's turned into a larger double top. You can see it here. So 71.65 is very key. And unless there's some peace deal announced, I would not be shorting this. I'd just be looking for pullbacks, and it could actually pull away to the breakaway gap on Sunday that has not been filled. So 67.50 is a key target area on that for a pullback. If it were to trigger for some remaining longs, I consider taking them off and putting them back on the pullback. The probabilities are still favorable. They are lower. So, yes, you can do reward to risk. That's another thing you were asking. For example, if I have double bottoms or double tops and they are against the daily rotation zone, especially, then I will, and I have a bunch to choose from, I will filter out the ones that the daily rotation zone is right in the way. And I'll take the ones that it's not. So those are the kind of things you can keep incorporating as you learn these strategies, incorporate into your trading. But keep an eye, again, it poked above the 200 up that 78 level and then falling back down. This 200 is remaining to be a very strong area of resistance. Dollar index, not surprised to see a little pause here, running up very close to 87.5, but I'm not watching on any pullback. Key support is 98 at this point. And then major support is about 97.50, 97.60. What else do we have? Bitcoin. Bitcoin finally looking like it can break above this. Today's close is going to be very critical, and the first target for me is 74 450 area to retest the fit. Remember, we've come down to the first target, and we could easily bounce into the rotation zone before another potential rotation back down. What do I mean in the way? I'd have to find. I'll point that out when I find a good example. Did somebody list a B? Let me take a look at BX. Monthly double top on BX. Is that valid though? Is it valid? We got to measure this one out. No, see, this would not be a double top. This is too big. So really, based off this being triggered, if it were a double top, I'd just be looking at the first target anyways, but it's technically not a valid double top. Because the second, third targets are below the move that started it. So pretty much, if you're going to try to play a breakdown play in Blackstone, I'd be just looking for this key support, and I'd use harmonics also. All right. We'll have to find an example of a double. Let's see. Now, so example, this one, see service now. This is technically a weekly pattern. But you see how the weekly double, this has to be managed tighter because the weekly double, the 8 EMA is right at that first target. So the weekly is in the way. The daily is not in the way because see how it's flattened out and it's not by where it's triggering. So that's why I'm still, this double, it looks like it's triggered yesterday. So the daily's out of the way. You see that? Holy. But the weekly's still in the way. So this is fine on the daily, still has to be managed tightly at the weekly. At least for the weekly, it's at the first target. All right. See, here's an example with this. Let's just say this was a double top pattern. You see how the weekly is out of the way because where it would trigger is below the rotation zone. So it's also breaking the rotation zone, and that is out of the way. All right, this would be one that was out of the way on a weekly basis. What else do we have? The spiders, again, holding the key support, gapping up. Key resistance in the spiders are now 686. Gapping up today on a rollover, it would be for the gap fill of 680.33. And then we still have that major support right around 676 area. The Qs, the major resistance is right still about this 608.90, 608 to 608.90. Gapping up to 605 on a rollover play would be the gap fill to 601.58, and still I'm looking at this 598.65 level as key support. And then if we break below that, I'm looking closer to yesterday's low, and then if we break yesterday's low, the 587.72. The IWM also confirming the double but not triggering it. The validation point for that is at 265.39. So remember, not triggered. And if it gets above 265.39, it is invalidated without triggering. Right now, gapping up, there's some pretty strong resistance right about 262.25. And then you're looking at, there's a gap left behind back at this closing price of 263.81. On a rollover, 259.24 is the gap fill to the downside. All right, you got that? Does that it makes sense to holy great. What else? That is about it. I'm still juggling a lot of stuff. We do have Broadcom earnings today, so it'll be interesting. The Head and Shoulders top, which has triggered, is still holding the 50 EMA. All right, so it's going to be interesting to see how this reacts on earnings. Would Google be a head and shoulder 295-ish on a daily with the 200 being the target? It is, let me look at the daily. Yeah, you can see my line. It is the target on this. The target, since it's a flat horizontal neckline, the first target would be around 270. So you have a cluster here with a harmonic. And so here's a really good example. So when I say key levels, so this is key level. Why? Because we have a first target from a Head and Shoulders, by the way, which is not confirmed or triggered yet. We have a harmonic, 25% harmonic, and we have a support level. So this is a very key first target. That's where I look for when I talk about clusters. Second target, look at the second target. It's right by this prior resistance area that it broke out from. See that? So this is another key area. All right, resistance shelf now is support, and it's right by the second target, and you have the 200 right there. So yeah, so in this case, I'd really be focusing on the structure, reward, risk, and my targets. I'd be looking at the first target and the second target would be my major targets for this, especially since the third target is behind the 200. If there's a spike between the two lows of a double bottom that trades below the 87.5, we're going to have to go through an example with that. It depends on how the bounce, it depends if it invalid. There's a number of rules, which we can somewhat go into. If you're in doubt, just don't treat it as a double. If it's not a clean pattern when you're beginning this, just don't treat it. There's so many some of these have nuances, but if you think it's been invalidated or it looks like maybe it's a triple, just don't trade it as a double. That's the easiest rule to remember. Okay. Now this would be a valid double bottom for Google. Okay. Or Alphabet. Sorry, I'll always call it Google. I wish they would change their symbol. So this is the move that started it. Here's the double bottom pattern. There's the trigger point. Now, would I be really interested in this? Let's say this head and shoulders does not trigger. Okay, yes. Why? Remember we talked about in the beginning. If this, let's say I had a filter and there's a bunch of these popping up and this is going to trigger and it's nowhere close to triggering yet. But let's say this is going to trigger. Why would I be interested? Because it's holding support. It's against a very key level. The daily rotation zone, again, would be out of the way. Why? Because if the pattern triggers, the rotation zone is under it. The 50 EMA is under it. So there's nothing in the way. And also, look, you have the first target area just in front of a gap fill. So this would be on a radar screen for a really nice little potential double. Potential. By the way, there's also could be a front run percent beat buy, but it would have to be managed into the rotation zone. Because let's see how this is a percent beat buy from yesterday above the high, as long as it follows through with the close. Why do I say it has to be managed closely? Because we have the rotation zone and the 50 EMA in the middle. So anywhere in this, you could find key resistance and roll back over. So is it a valid setup? Yeah, it just has to be managed closely because there's a lot of key targets in the way. No problem, Jake. You're welcome, Jake. So that's a key example. So I just set another alert just on this platform to remind myself. If this does hold up and does trigger, it's a really nice setup against key support. Now, if we break this key support, it could be going the other way. And we trigger this head and shoulders top. Yeah, it could go up or down, but we have to wait for it to trigger either way. Right now, has it triggered either pattern? No. We have a pattern to the upside, a pattern to the downside. Neither of them are confirmed or triggered. Right? So, does that mean, hey, anything could go up or down, but we actually have two patterns that could trigger? And that's not like that on every stock. Like Nvidia has a still massive confirmed but not triggered head and shoulders top. However, there is no buy setup just now. I mean, technically, it was a potential percent beat buy for Monday, but it did not trigger. So, like as opposed to Alphabet, I don't have a valid buy setup on Nvidia yet. I still have a valid sell setup that has not been triggered on a weekly basis. Now, next week, let's say we end this week like this. Next week, there could be a weekly percent beat buy setup for a bounce. So then we could have a valid setup, but at this point, there isn't one yet. It does happen a fair amount because you generally have things that you have patterns develop at key support or resistance levels, and you also have patterns the other way that are setting up because it's testing those key support levels. Yes, price action is key. And then there's other stuff I look at. It helps me again filter out and refine targets. All right, that's enough of me rambling on. We're still technically, even with this dip, we could still close the week. We have a couple days left. We'll see, but we still could close the week holding on to the weekly rotation zone. But this is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So it's going to be interesting to see how this week closes. With that, that's about it. Just in the open, really pay attention to about this 68, 54, 55 level. Pay very close attention to that. And with that, I will talk to everyone later. You're welcome, holy. Target building steam, and we are long target. We are long target. We've been long target for, I don't remember when we put out that buy recommendation, but we are long target. So remember, I've listed this before, and it was in the unfiltered investor. When we put it out, I think it was closer to a 4% dividend, but it's rallying a bit, so the dividend's dropping. But the P to E was ridiculous. It was like 11 when we put this out or something. And it broke above key support, tested it here. Prior resistance becoming support, dipping across the rotation zone. Now it's just continuing to grind higher. So that's another one, which is a different style of play. With that, I will talk to everyone later. Have a wonderful, wonderful trading day. See you all tomorrow. Bye for now.